Well, hello and welcome back to the very latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, I've got a wonderful guest for you today, and the subject is called The Science of Finding a Good Man. So to help me along the journey and to discuss this wonderful topic, I've got the wonderful Dr. Mairi Macleod. She is a behavioural scientist and she is a dating expert. And I've spoken to her before. I've heard lots about her from mutual contacts, and I really am excited to have her on the podcast to discuss this topic with me. So welcome.
Hi there, James. It's great to be here today.
I really am glad to have you on there. We've talked about this for some time, and we're going to get you on. So before we start, can you tell everybody who you are and what exactly you do?
Well, as you said, I'm Dr. Mairi Macleod. I'm an evolutionary behavioural biologist. So I started out as a biologist studying animal behaviour, monkeys and their mating strategies. But then over the years, I've done lots of science writing for the press and built up a huge knowledge of human behaviour. And now I'm using this knowledge to help women over 50 mainly to find their good partner, someone that will make them happy rather than picking the wrong man. And I'm doing this from a point of view of personal experience as well, because I've been through that journey myself.
Did you find it hard?
I did very much find it hard. Yeah, I chose very badly when I picked my first husband, and I followed my gut instincts, those instincts that evolved back in the Stone Age when we were actually looking for different things back then. And so we tend to be hampered by these instincts that don't tell us to go for the right guys, basically. So I ended up spending very many years on my own as a single mum, and I had a habit of, I did have a few relationships, I did some online dating and stuff, but I kept picking the wrong guys. I kept picking sort of high status bad boys, that kind of thing, and these invariably didn't work out too well. But then I realized I actually had some of the answers. I had the answers from the research and the writing that I'd been doing. And so I figured out how to actually pick the right kind of guys. And so I put that into practice, and I met my now husband, who is a fantastic guy. But crucially, he's not somebody that I would have necessarily noticed had I been following my old ways. But he's now the love of my life. I absolutely adore him. So now I want to kind of help other women in the same situation as I was to kind of go through that process that in terms of finding the right guy and knowing the right things to look for.
I have to ask, where did you meet your husband?
I met him initially at a singles event. It was just in a pub in Edinburgh. And, we sort of clicked. But I wouldn't say there was like sparks and fireworks or anything. I wasn't immediately thinking, oh, I've got to have this guy. But I did like him. I liked his personality. I was curious to know more. And he came across as a really nice guy. And as it happened, he started coming along to some classes that I was running. So we had a chance to get to know each other, for a bit of time. But it wasn't until actually, I realized, over these few weeks, more and more I got to like him and got to like his personality. And I could see that he was, the right kind of guy, and he seemed to be interested in me as well. But I wasn't feeling that spark, as I said. But then he invited me to come along to a music event in a pub in Edinburgh that he was singing at and playing ukulele. And I thought, oh, well, I know that, a guy who can do music, that really does it for me. So I thought, I'll see how this goes. And so I went along, and it was amazing. Like, he was a great singer. He was full of confidence, and he owned the place. And after about the second song, I thought, right, that's it. He's for me. So that was the turning point. And I think that's one of the crucial things. We know we should go for a nice guy, but often, we don't desire them, or they don't seem exciting enough, or whatever it is. But I think if you find their confident sweet spot, if you find a guy's confident area, that can make all the difference. It doesn't have to be music. It could be that they're a great lecturer and give amazing talks, and if you see other people appreciating them as well, that makes all the difference.
it's social proof, isn't it? It's validation that they are interesting. People want to be with them. I'm
Yeah,
fascinated. He was a ukulele player in Edinburgh. It wasn't a
yeah.
George Formby tribute band, was it?
No, 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 no.
No, because I have many happy memories of going out on dates and meeting ladies in Edinburgh bars back in the day when I was single. Because I used to be an actor, so I used to go to the festivals quite a lot, and I went to school near
Oh
there.
yeah,
So they are
yeah,
great places. It's all about the vibe and the ambience there, isn't it? In particular. So I think if
yeah.
you're
No,
getting in the mood and you feel excited and happy, and everyone around you is feeling happy, then you're more likely to have a great date and to like the person that you're with. And it's about injecting that excitement into your dates and having the fun. That's what it is. But I have to ask you as well. You mentioned about how you were picking the wrong guys, and he was a nice guy. Why do you think it is? Why are women wired to go after these bad guys in the first place?
Well, it's like I was saying earlier. We have a lot of our kind of predilections and what we're attracted to evolved back in Stone Age times. Back then we needed different things from relationships. So relationships tended to be a bit less long term. People didn't live as long, and the important things back then for women to go for were, a big, strong, tough guy that was dominant over other guys and could protect his women and their children. And so nowadays we've retained a lot of those preferences. So we tend to go for high status guys, or, maybe guys that've got plenty of money and are dominant over other guys and are, super confident and all the rest of it. But the problem with that is it's not necessarily a good ingredients for long-term happiness in a relationship. And it's not necessarily what older women are needing either, and as I say, I'm sort of specializing in helping women sort of past the age of, looking for a guy to have babies with. But we're kind of stuck in these ideas of what is attractive in a guy. So we need to take a step back and realize that you can't have everything in one guy. If you've got a guy who's, competitive, dominant, high status and stuff, then he probably has personality characteristics that are attractive in the short term, but they're not necessarily good in the long term. So what you really want for the long term is a guy who's high in the personality factor agreeableness. That means somebody that's highly empathetic, considerate, will, have your well-being at heart. And so, the nice guys, basically, because that's what's, going to make you happy in the longer term. So we have to sort of change our attention and kind of look out for the signs that show us that a guy has got what it takes to make us happy in a relationship.
How important is confidence when it comes to this? Because that's a very alpha trait, but also it doesn't necessarily mean to be someone that's alpha. Anyone that's comfortable in their own skin can be confident. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, confidence, that's highly, highly attractive to women, obviously, as we all know. And as I was pointing out, if you do come across a nice guy that, maybe you don't feel the spark right away, you have to sort of try and do a bit of digging and be a bit patient as well and let the confident areas come through. But it is a danger that we are attracted to super confident guys. And the problem with this is that sometimes that's an indicator of personality characteristics of the dark triad, which sounds very scary, and it is really scary. I mean, basically, the dark triad is psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. And these guys with, that are high in these, they're super confident, but they don't have your interests at heart. And they're often very, very good at coming across as really nice. They know all the right things to say. They're so confident with women, and they have women flocking to them, but actually these personality characteristics are indicative of a short-term mating strategy. So basically they're in it for the short term and they're in it for themselves. And so if you have a habit of going for super confident guys, then there's a big danger that you could end up with one of those, and that could end very, very badly.
But then you talk about how you met your husband. He was a nice guy, but he was still confident when he was doing what he loved doing. So confidence can come to all people. This dark triad thing absolutely fascinates me. I've never really covered this before, so I'm going to have to ask you some more about this. So can you just tell everyone about the three elements there and why they are so bad? That would be really interesting.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's they're the dark triad they have three components: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. They can exist separately, but they tend to overlap a lot in individuals. So you quite often get people with elements of all three. Yeah. And basically, I mean, the thing that they all have in common is very, very low agreeableness, that personality trait that we said we wanted high amounts of. So that means they have no empathy. They don't care about other people's feelings or anything. Machiavellianism, as the name might suggest, it's, a manipulative kind of personality, that they'll be kind of looking out for things that you say that they might be able to use against you later. It's a sort of long-term strategy. They come across as caring and cheering and all the rest of it, but actually they're manipulating you. Psychopathy is a sort of fearlessness, impulsiveness, and it goes along with a lot of infidelity. And narcissism, that's one that probably people have come across the most or are most familiar with. But it's people with a sense of entitlement that they are better than everybody else, and they want to show off a lot. And it can be really, really horrible. I mean, these characteristics can lead to some really nasty behaviour in a partner with them. So infidelity is one thing that is high on the list. And it actually correlates very, very strongly with, intimate partner violence or abuse or emotional abuse. So people that do that sort of thing are almost always high in the dark triad. So these are guys to really, really avoid. I mean, it does happen in women as well, but it seems to get picked up more in men. It might be the way that it's measured because, women have different ways of expressing personality traits sometimes. So it could be an artifact of the way the questions are asked, but it does seem to be more of an issue for men. And as I say, one of the strongest hypotheses about why it exists at all is that it's a short-term mating strategy, which is mostly beneficial for men. And so basically, you really want to avoid these kind of people. But the problem is they often start out rather as just incredibly wonderful and nice and putting you on a pedestal and just love bombing. And if the words too good to be true come into your head about a relationship, then it probably isn't true. You should really, have your antennae up when that happens. And if you're feeling slightly uneasy about a guy at the beginning, he seems to be wonderful, but there's something not quite right, I would listen to those sort of feelings, because often we can pick up on little inconsistencies, even subconsciously. Maybe they change their expression sometimes, or maybe they stop being quite so nice, or they switch off the niceness accidentally when they think you're not looking. So I mean, basically I tell women, if you want to avoid these kind of guys, if everything is wonderful at the beginning, look out for little inconsistencies. Does the nice behavior switch off from time to time? Does he start controlling you in a little subtle ways at the beginning? Maybe when you're out with your friends, he kind of texts you to find out how you are, but actually, he wants to know who you're with and what you're up to, maybe a bit jealous. Does he sort of criticize your friends, or does he not like it when you speak to other guys? And, just being a bit too sort of controlling. And I would really sort of, you want to look out for guys who are considerate and nice, but they behave in a nice way to other people, even when they think you're not looking. Those are the guys that you want. And you want a guy who is happy to introduce you to his friends and family, and his friends and family are all saying nice things about him, that he's not trying to cover anything up. So these are the kind of things that you want to be doing to sort of try and avoid getting into that horrific situation where you're with a narcissist or someone else with dark triad traits, because it can go really badly.
I do completely agree with you and everything you said there, and it's very, very valid points and very useful. But I think the term narcissist is thrown around quite a lot, particularly in pop culture at the moment, and people are accusing everyone of being narcissists. And often guys are just plain old clueless, and they don't have a strategy. They just a bit silly, really. You don't really know what they're doing. So you have to be careful with that. As people that are labeling people too quickly. I've come across many narcissists in my time, but quite often these guys aren't doing it intentionally. They are just doing it because they don't really know how to behave in relationships. They haven't got secure attachment styles. They're just a bit avoidant and they don't really know. But there's a lot of con men out there, like you say, who will mislead women. There's a lot of con women as well who tell men what they want to hear. So it does work both ways. But it's important to know how to make good choices, isn't it, in the first place? So how much should you compromise and how much should you allow, and what are your thoughts on things like settling?
Well, I think I often tell people that, don't necessarily go for the best looking guy, the richest guy, all that kind of thing, because that guy is going to have very high mate value. That's one of the terms that I use. It's used by psychologists. Mate value is a measure of your appeal, your general appeal out on the mating market. So how many options do you have out there? It's not necessarily correlated with how much value you have as a partner, because, you might be super, attractive in lots of ways, but you might not be a very nice person, so the two things aren't necessarily closely related. But the problem is, if you go for someone that's got really high mate value, then they know it. They know they've got the high mate value. They know they've got lots of other options. They might not treat you particularly well in a relationship. They might not invest in your relationship as much as you would like. So I think it's a good idea to go for someone who you consider has a similar mate value to you. But I'm not suggesting settling as such. What I'm suggesting is reprioritizing what you're looking for, focusing on different qualities. You don't want to compromise on the things that really matter. I would compromise on things like, what hobbies does he do? Like my husband doesn't go skiing, and I absolutely love skiing, but that's not a deal breaker. I can go skiing with someone else, but he has the personality traits that make for a fantastic relationship. We're 5 years in and we're still, madly in love, and I love being with him. So it's not about settling, it's about reprioritizing and picking the characteristics that actually matter for a good long-term relationship. And that's what not to compromise on. But the other stuff, like what kind of career does he have? Has he got the perfect physical characteristics? Is he 6'4" tall? That's one that trips up a lot of women. And I think they can afford to compromise on the height thing, because that will open up a much bigger pool of potential mates. But, because how tall a guy isn't really that important in terms of long-term relationship. But things like, does he have what I call a high welfare trade-off ratio skewed in your favor? That means basically that he's willing to make sacrifices for your well-being. He will, take the coat off his back to keep you warm in a blizzard. He will do things that are good for you. And, he's going to be like that in all realms of life. And if you can be like that as well with him, then you've got the ingredients for an absolutely amazing relationship. So
it's all about balance, really, isn't it? And working these things out. You mentioned height, though, because that surely is a scientific thing. It's how women are wired to. You mentioned how they go for the biggest, strongest guy, and height is something that isn't so important nowadays. But many women will say to me now they want to date a tall guy. They can never consider dating someone who is shorter than them. How would you suggest someone deal with that little limiting belief there? Because I struggle with it all the time, not because of my own height, I'm quite tall, but I mean in terms of my clients. And they say, well, I want to wear heels. I say, well, how important is it to you to wear heels? What do you want more, a happy relationship or the heels? And something's got to give. What would you advise them?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, that's more or less what I would say. I mean, the reason we have this obsession with tall guys is, because back in the day, in our ancestral times, that was really important. Tall guys were the ones that could dominate other guys. They could protect you. They could get resources that you need for yourself and your children. So that was really important. And even nowadays, tall guys do tend to do better, not because they are more intelligent or kinder or funnier or anything, but, you stand more chance of becoming the US president if you're tall, for example. You get into leadership positions more likely if you're tall as a guy. But there are no biological reasons why, or social reasons why that should be the case nowadays. It's just a kind of leftover thing that affects our behaviour. Yeah. But I suppose if we can be aware of that, aware of the fact that this is not an adaptive trait anymore, that it's not going to help us to go for a tall guy. And what, as you say, what is more important, being with someone that's taller than you, or having an amazing, happy, long-term relationship, for the foreseeable future. I think most people looking for a relationship would think the latter, so yeah, you've got to ditch that obsession with tall men, because there are lots of really great shorter guys out there.
It doesn't really change when you get over 50 either, does it? I've plenty of women in their 70s that still want to date a tall guy, and we don't look at these guys who are 5'3", 5'4", and heights like that, which is very unfortunate because they could be a perfectly good match for them. What other obstacles do you think women over 50 face more than those who may be different age groups?
Well, I mean, clearly, as women age, our mate value does go down somewhat because, men value youth and physical attractiveness. That's, part of what makes a woman have high mate value. And, older women are obviously aware of that. And there are, men put limits on themselves in things like online dating by, having quite a narrow range of ages that they'll consider, even though if they meet a woman in real life, they'll have different viewpoints of it. A case in point is me and my husband. Actually, we didn't meet online. If we had, we wouldn't have met online, basically, because I'm actually 11 years older than him, and he wasn't thinking that he particularly wanted to go for an older woman, but when he met me, it all worked out. But so men do put sort of limits on themselves in online dating, which is a shame. But actually, older women have a lot of advantages when it comes to dating in general, especially compared with women that are just a bit younger, maybe women in their 30s or early 40s that are looking for a man to have kids with. We don't have a loudly ticking biological clock. We're not worried about finding the one to settle down with and have babies with. We don't have to find a good genetic father for our children because we ain't going to have any more children. So that kind of frees us up. We don't have to stick with a guy, because we've had babies together, because we're not going to have babies together, so it just gives older women a lot more freedom to pick and choose. And if they get into something that they're not really happy with, then they can leave. And older women are probably more likely to be financially independent. They've got their careers, they've got their own stuff together, so they're actually in a really good position to pick the right guy. So I think there are pros and cons, but I think there's lots of pros, definitely.
Oh, definitely. I've got many women who are quite happy now. They have opportunities and adventures ahead of them. But you touched upon online dating there. And I work with lots of online dating sites, and I've found that as you do get older, there's less and less options available. And I am actually struggling at the moment with some of my clients who are maybe over 60 to find a decent dating site that has enough quality guys of the right caliber on there. So can I ask what sites have you recommend and any tips you've got in terms of online dating for those who are maybe over 50?
Well, the sites that women that I'm working with have said they like are eHarmony, and that's one that uses sort of lots of personality factors to match people. Restless dating. Restless is a site that's actually for over 50s.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, I mean it's a website that's for over 50s generally, so they do lots of other things, but they do dating as well. Some women have said Bumble is good because the women get to message first, but I've heard other people say that they didn't like Bumble because you can't search yourself. You have to
filter, can you?
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point, because I wouldn't just, if I were online dating, I wouldn't be thinking in terms of just waiting for matches to be delivered. I would be looking myself and looking through people's profiles and actually, trying to find guys that were the right kind of guy and contacting them. It's the 21st century. We're allowed to do that. We don't have to wait around.
You have to do that because these men, like you mentioned before, they're not searching for women in their own appropriate age group. So if you don't
Yeah.
reach out to them first, they're never going to notice you. So you have to do that. And you've got to stand out. Be the woman that reached out to a guy who'd be flattered by it.
Absolutely. And, look at their profiles, find things about them that you're interested in specifically, and mention those things so that they know that you're interested in them, not just in men in general, because the science shows us that, showing that you like someone generates reciprocal liking, but only if it's them that you like and it's special to them, that they're special, and it's not just scattergun approach. I mean, we all know what it's like when you get messages from guys going, "Hey, how you doing?" or "What are you up to today?" It's like, who cares? It's like you haven't picked anything in my profile to pick up on. And the same point we'd go for in terms of selecting guys that do get in touch with you. Make sure that they're picking up on specific things that you say in your profile. So that means you've got to write your profile in a way that you're talking about unique things about yourself, and specific things that you like, so that they can respond to that, and you can use that as a test of their being into actually finding a proper relationship, rather than just people that are messaging everyone and using sort of cut and paste messages. So I would definitely recommend doing that.
I completely agree. You have to find a guy that makes an effort right from the start. And if you don't get the right vibe from him, then trust your gut instincts and just move on to somebody else. How else would you recommend that women meet appropriate guys? You mentioned singles events before. So what are your thoughts on those?
Oh, well, it worked for me. I mean, you can meet people anywhere, literally anywhere. And what I would suggest is just get into the habit of talking to people. Everybody. It doesn't have to be men that you're interested in. Just practice talking to people so that you get used to enjoying, the vibe of getting to know people. And then, if you do meet someone that you think, oh, he's quite nice, maybe ask him to help you with something, ask him for a little bit of investment. Say, maybe you're in a cafe and you're on your computer. Oh, could you just watch my laptop while I go and get a coffee? Or could you maybe reach that thing on the high shelf for me? This isn't about kind of, doing away with your feminist credentials or anything. This is just starting a conversation in a nice way, really, and maybe asking for help with something that you would actually like help with. People like to feel needed, and once you sort of start that conversation up, you never know where it might lead. And in terms of going to events and things, one thing in terms of the science, it's good if you can find places with a high proportion of men, not for the obvious reason that there's going to be more men, but because when there is a higher proportion of men behave differently, and you're more likely to kind of be able to get the attention, the kind of attention that you would like. Because, what the studies show is that, when one sex is in short supply, they get to call the shots in terms of the way they want to relate to others. And it can be a much better way of starting off an interaction and then potentially a relationship if you are in a situation where there's lots of guys compared to with a number of women.
Do they become more competitive?
Yeah, but they're more likely to behave in a way that women like, So, I mean, just to give you an example, a few years back, before I met my husband, I was went out to meet some friends in a bar. And it was supposed to be a mixed group, but it turned out that I was the only woman that turned up in this group of friends. So, I was there with about 8 guys. And they all wanted to talk to me, and it was like, and they're all being very gentlemanly and nice and giving me lots of attention. But, I can't kid myself that it would have been a different story had all the female friends turned up. I wouldn't have been getting that attention. But then imagine another situation where you're in a bar and it's mostly women and there's just a few guys. What you'll find in that situation is there'll be lots of hair flicking and, flesh on show and, basically men getting to kind of perhaps behave in a sort of short-term strategy way, shall we say. So it's a very different dynamic. So it's worth thinking about, the ratio of people. So if you're thinking of going to a class or a club or something like that, think about, who's likely to be there. Is there likely to be a lot of guys there, or is it going to be mostly women? I don't mean they should never go to something with lots of women if you're a woman, but you can make lots of friends. But if your purpose is to meet guys, then make sure there's lots of them compared to the number of women.
I agree. I think it's good to make sure that you make time for this and you do put yourselves in situations where you will meet the right guys. You're not necessarily going to meet them down the local yoga class, but some guys do.
Some guys do. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, you have to make an effort. There's no getting around that. A lot of people have this idea that, I'll just wait for the universe to deliver the guy. He's going to turn up on the doorstep, or that somehow there's something wrong with actually trying to make it happen. But you have to make your own luck. You have to make opportunities. The night that I met my husband, right, it was. I didn't really want to go. It was a friend of mine wanted me to go along to this singles night with her. It was like early January and it was horrible and rainy and cold in Edinburgh. And I didn't really fancy going. And I remember actually saying to myself, Mari, look, you've got to make opportunities. I literally said that to myself. and so I went. And if I hadn't gone, I wouldn't have met the love of my life.
That's it. So you have to help it along, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I do recommend that. Go and do a little Google search, see which events are coming up. Singles events can be really good. Find a class you can go to, find a talk, but find a talk maybe that was going to interest guys, because there's lots of them out there. Don't just go to one that's going to have a mainly female audience, but just doing something, taking any form of action. There are lots of decent guys out there over the age of 50. I coached a wonderful guy in his 60s this morning. He was wonderful. He's been widowed for a few years, doesn't know what to do, but he's so excited now getting back on the dating scene again. And he's a lovely guy. He's really keeps himself in shape. And these guys do exist. Good guys really do exist, don't they?
They absolutely do. I mean, often we don't kind of notice them because the ones that approach us, the ones that are kind of in our face, are often the super confident guys who are maybe not looking for a long-term relationship, and they maybe don't worry too much about what other people think. But the nice guys, the ones that we might actually be better off with in a relationship, they might be hanging back a bit, maybe not so hyper confident, maybe a bit more respectful as well. So we have to be, try and make ourselves open to being approachable. Think about your body language and eye contact and stuff like that.
Smile and look friendly.
Yeah, don't be sitting on your phone all the time or talking to your friends. Just have a look around the room and look approachable, see what happens.
Exactly. Guys want it to be easy. They don't want to approach someone that's very cold. Make it easy for them. They'll come and approach you. This is guys of all ages.
Just think how terrifying it is for guys, especially if they're not super confident, that they have to cross the room, come and talk to you with all your friends around you. And then what if you say something horrible back to him? It's going to be awful.
It is.
You have to look approachable and make it easy for him, or approach him yourself. That's
what I was going to say. There's nothing stopping you from going across the room and saying, hi, how you doing? You look a bit lost, or what you're drinking, or like your tie. It doesn't matter. Just start the conversation. He'll be quite flattered that you made the effort to go and make him feel comfortable. But do you know what? We've come to almost the end of this podcast already, and we could carry on talking for a long, long time. What is your final tip you'd like to give my listeners?
Final tip. Well, I think the best way to find a good relationship is not to be sort of thinking in terms of how can I be attractive to men in general? How can I make him commit to me? What tricks have I got up my sleeve to, make him want me or whatever? I think it's more about identifying guys who have what it takes to make you happy, or, to build a relationship with you. There are all sorts of guys out there, and the ones with good personalities, the ones who are considerate, who are reliable, who are going to actually look after your feelings and going to have your well-being at heart. That's what you want to find. And you have to use your sort of objective criteria to get the others out of the way and not waste your time on guys who are not looking for a proper relationship. So ask yourself, does this guy have what it takes? It's not about making yourself attractive to everyone, and think about your own unique qualities. Yes, some guys will be put off if you've got a PhD in astrophysics, or if you're a fitness fanatic or whatever, but the guys who are into that stuff, they'll love you for it. Those are the really important things. So don't shy away from what makes you, basically.
I completely agree. If guys are put off, then fantastic, because you've eliminated them from your inquiries. You don't have to waste time talking to them. If they don't like the fact that you've got children, or don't like the fact that you're educated or successful, good. They're losers, get rid of them. They're not just right for you. Let them go and date somebody else. But you're absolutely right. That's great advice. Thank you so much for that. Now, if somebody wants to find out more about you and what you do, how would they do that?
Well, just go to my website, which is datingevolved.com. So that's datingevolved, all one word, .com. And there you'll find lots of information about what I do. There's a free masterclass webinar coming up that you might like to sign up for. And I've got other free resources and blog posts and things. So do visit datingevolved.com.
Excellent. Please do.
and if you like, you can book a call with me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're really, really busy. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully my listeners have learned a lot from this. So have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much, James. You too.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespriest.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.